Here we go. We're recording, so let's hope this works. Let's hope this works. What's going on, everybody? What's going on, everybody? We got, welcome to the inaugural episode of HashTalk, first episode ever on this Friday, 4/20. We should probably get our bongs going because we don't have much time. I'm going to admit a few people into the room and we are going to smoke because it is 4/20. So welcome everyone who made it for 4/20. Nice to see you all. It's a pretty good group right there. Can everybody hear me okay?
Very well.
Beautiful. Well, welcome everyone. Let's have a 4/20 hit to start the ceremony, shall we? Yeah, super stoked to have you all here. We got Best Friend Farms. We got Dammit Bobby. We got Flab 421, the Dank Duchess. We got Scott from Taste of Cascadia. We got the Great Lakes. And we got Hua. Hua Extractions is in the house. Right on, brother. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. All right, so a little bit of noise for the beginning because, hey, we can't start a 4/20 show and not have...
Yeah, sorry, I had to light a joint, sorry.
Yeah, dude, of course. Come on, light that joint, light that chillum, light that bowl, blast that banger, whatever it is that you prefer to do, because we are here to talk about hash today. And a lot of people have been bothering me over the years. When is Hash Church gonna talk about hash? I'll admit we do go off on some pretty crazy tangents. The focus on this conversation is going to remain hashish related. So we are going to talk about all things hash today. I don't have 3 to 4 hours to put into it, unfortunately, today. I got to drive up to Whistler here in a short period of time. Probably an hour and a half maybe is what I could probably pull off. I'm going to mute everyone that is not muted because that makes it so much nicer in my ears not to have to hear all that stuff. And my banger is ready. So here we go. First show. I guess I should share this in the other YouTube chat. There we go. We'll just put that in there so they can all come see us over here. Let's hit it up. And yes, it's going to be quiet when I'm taking a rip because, well, it's the one time I can't talk. All right, great. So let's get right into it, everybody. We're not going into a big introduction. Let's get Heavy Ice in here. We got someone else coming in under the name iPad. What's going on, brother?
How you doing?
Welcome, welcome.
What does that say?
That says, what's up?
Oh, what's good?
What's good, what's good? Welcome, welcome. We're just starting this first episode.
What's up?
We got some new folks in the house. Kush Kirk is in the house.
You.
Great to see you, brother.
Good to see everyone. Hell yeah. What's good, brother?
I'll tell you what's good right off the bat is Instagram is good. Instagram has brought the hash game to a place where it really needed to be. We started in caves practically. We got onto websites eventually like Overgrow and Cannabis Culture and Cannabis.com and CannabisWorld.com. That was kind of the late 80s scene where you could trade this information. But Instagram really blew it off the hinges, being so mainstream of an app. And it's really how I met the majority of you guys. I asked Instagram to tag hash makers that would be worthy of a panel for Hash Church. And you guys were, guys and gals, were the names that came up. And so we did a little Hash Church last Sunday, and I felt like we really barely tipped the iceberg in the conversation. It started going, and we squeezed out all the people who were coming in for the rosin panel, which we're going to do a Hash Church down the road for that. But it really showed me how much of this conversation is still really urging to happen. And I feel that there is almost a reemergence of hash making, of solventless extraction, if you will, even though it's the craziest misnomer of a name for us to use. It's the misnomer we use. Solventless is what we call, I guess, petrochemical extraction free, whereas water is the universal solvent. Hydrocarbons, which make up the terpenes of the plant and the building blocks of all the cannabinoids, are also solvents themselves. So I want to stay mildly scientific in the terminology where we kind of are accurate with the words that we're using, but at the same time, I understand that we're still going to sometimes call the cultivar a strain, and sometimes we're going to use the terminology solventless. I don't think it's the worst, just a little bit of a misnomer. So I've got a bit of a list here, guys, in regards to kind of conversations. I wrote a little bit about, I mean, as a hash maker, if you're the grower and you are finding the cultivars and you're finding the phenos and you're using your olfactory to find that terpene profile, and then you're actually growing it, producing and creating the inputs to grow that plant and then washing it, well, I mean, what can be said? That's just you're a rock star if you're doing all that. That's the full meal deal, and I have a full appreciation and a respect for that. A lot of hash makers are not that, and that's okay. But we do have to sort of pay attention to probably the most important thing as a hash maker, because the quality has already been taken care of for us if we're lucky. All we really have to do is isolate it, which the process does very, very simply, which becomes then our only job really becomes to dry it. And I'm sure many of you have seen in the years of drying cannabis, you can take beautiful cannabis and dry it incorrectly, cure it incorrectly, and ruin it and really drop it down multiple grade points. I feel the same is true for hash. So I thought, let's start out the conversation today with drying, whether you guys want to talk about sieving versus microplaning, whether you want to talk about air drying versus freeze dryers. I'm down for whatever. I just thought that would be kind of a good starting point, as it's probably one of the most important things as a hash maker. If you're not doing all the other things that I mentioned, the drying is probably really the most important aspect of what you should be paying attention to.
Totally. Agreed.
Anyone got any thoughts on how to start that conversation?
Yeah, totally. I was actually going to say, I got some hand-dried hash right here. And there's like such a funny story about it, like where it almost died out on my part, where just the people that are purchasing, you know, like they just want the freeze dried because of the look, you know. But the hand dried is such a traditional side of it that I don't want to let go, and keep it around is really, I think, important. And it shows that somebody doesn't need to rely on like a machine. I mean, having a machine is good and all, but there's just a skill when you can use your hands to do the same job type of thing. And I think it goes to show that somebody that does do it obviously is a little bit more like passionate about it and dedicated to the craft a little bit more, which also says a lot too.
Yeah, I agree. I like that. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay. Well, I'm always a little bit funny about making any comparisons about who does which in whatever way. I air dry. I definitely been freeze drying. I used a freeze dryer from the beginning in 2015. It's been around for a super long time for some of us, and I don't think it indicates any more. I wasn't more passionate about hash making when I was air drying than now that I'm freeze drying, or when I go back to air drying. I think that's an irrelevant part of the conversation. I think what's really important is I myself, based on what I do, I get a lot of hash from a lot of different people all over the world. And last week, Marcus, you mentioned that when you had told people mistakenly to roll up the hash, a lot of times people were rolling up hash wet, and that's what I'm seeing. Whether it's freeze dried, people are very much using very small amount of numbers for their hours for drying, as if that's making their hash any better. And at the end of the day, I let shit sit out because I want to know if I'm going to write about it. And there's a lot of stuff that's just not dry. So whether you air dry and you're doing some kind of 7 to 9 day process, or you live in Colorado and it's done in 3 days, or you have your freeze dryer tech dialed in, at the end of the day, as long as you're putting out good medicine, good recreation, whatever you want to call it, as long as it's dried, then it will be good hash. However you do it is in no way indicative of what you care about.
Well, I mean,
I think.
Go ahead.
I think how the resin was grown has a lot to do with it too.
Everything to do with it, in my opinion.
Right.
I
Of
just, you know,
course, of
it
course.
kind of when Kirk was saying that, it kind of reminded me of, like, I get asked about macro photography all the time, and I do my macro photography handheld. Maybe some of you don't know that, maybe some of you do, but I don't use a rail system. I don't use a tripod. I don't like build this giant thing that I'm pushing a button to move my camera 0.5 millimeter at a time. And because of that, I feel that that skill is a real value to photographers to learn before they get the rail system. And I kind of attributed to Kirk saying what he said in a very, like, I understood what he meant by that. Like, yeah, there is something about, you know, not all of us are selling hash, first of all. It's not everyone is just making hash to sell it to people. Some of us are just hash makers.
It's just what.
Oh,
Sorry, Liz.
Something
I
happened.
wonder if you can hear us.
oh shit, I think I got bumped.
Okay. I mean, truthfully, Kurt, you know, I don't have any issue about passion, but I'm saying we have a tendency to divide ourselves when we're like, oh, I do it this way, I do it that way, and this way is better than that way. At the end of the day, we all want to provide good medicine. So the
No,
people who are washing,
without a
the people who are
doubt.
washing by hand, you know what I'm saying, don't love the plant more than I had bursitis in 2 shoulders from an injury from 20 years ago. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. So sometimes, you know, I do believe that we should display skill no matter what, like at every stage. Don't rely on any crutches. We should be able to like make hash in the bushes as long as we can get some ice and water, you know what I mean? I definitely believe that. But those who have decided to go through the machines, especially when you're doing large batches, I don't think we should look down on them at all, especially since a lot of us on this call are that.
I didn't hear him say
looking
looking down
I
on
just think everyone
anyone.
can relate and
Yeah.
say that, like, when you push a few buttons, it's a lot easier than doing it by hand.
Oh yeah,
No?
because we've all fucked up some shit by hand real bad. Fucked up real
Yeah,
bad. Real
exactly. And that's
It's a
kind of what I
And
different
with the
tell
freeze dryers though too.
Go ahead, guys.
and that's what I was gonna say. That's why I tell a lot of the people that ask me on Instagram of how to do it and all this shit and the tech and this. It's just like, honestly, you got to learn to like do it through losing a lot. Like, I've lost a lot of, yeah, that's how you learn. You don't really learn just by getting shit handed to you on a silver platter these days. And I mean, if you do,
By no means. Because, well, they run into obstacles all the time that make them be like, oh, wait, I don't know what's happening. It's like, oh, you didn't understand the fundamentals in the first place. So you only understood certain cultivars in certain situations. And that's why when something came out totally different, you just didn't know what to do.
right. Oh, 1000%. 1000%. People got to open up their eyes and know the plant before they even start working with it on a detailed level, like we're talking about. It's like, and that's the thing. Nobody really does. They all just jump to, 0 to 100 real quick and try to get that money. So I just don't think that sometimes people necessarily do take those steps that are required. I think that will make you, not just a better hash maker, but more knowledgeable of the plant and more understanding and not get frustrated when shit don't go right or some shit, Don't blame somebody else, like the grower or something, like there's so many variables.
Yeah, I like the idea of being able to finesse the resin through a sieve by hand, observing everything you're doing and just like observing the resin throughout the drying process. And obviously, like you said, there are times that, when you don't have the process down pat, that it gets too warm in the room or too humid in the room and something happens to the resin. And it's kind of interesting to see, what happens and obviously change that. But I like the idea. I used to microplane, but I like the idea of finessing it through a sieve. And that's what we do.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I would agree with that as well. I have always loved sieving the hash. Microplaning was something that we kind of discovered when we allowed really high quality hash to gum up and goop up before it was properly sieved, allowing too much water to wick out of the hash. And so we would freeze and we would microplane. And I remember kind of doing it. And I'll never forget the day the conversation started, like, well, isn't that shredding the heads? This was just right around the time macro photography was coming in, and people that were doing it were like, no, it doesn't shred the heads. And the first time I photographed a microplaned head, I was shocked at how shredded and flayed it was. And it made me understand immediately, like, well, here's this one more thing, like fresh frozen, microplane your hash. These are two ways to acquire what I like to call faux melt. Your shit won't melt if it's dry, so you need to, well, let's run it fresh. Maybe we'll save some terps that will give us that melt, that glossy look, you know? And then it's like, oh, well, maybe if we microplane the heads, when the flame hits it, all that resin will be already outside of the head and appear to be meltier than it actually is. Now, I'm not saying all microplaned hash is that. I've seen 6-star get microplaned that drips into a liquid and, you know, drops right through the tightest of screens. But I will say that a lot of people have taken into account the fresh frozen and the microplaned hash to give them an appearance of a hash that's maybe a little bit better than it really is.
Okay, jumping in on that just for a second. You know, it's always good that new people are coming into hash making. People should be making their own medicine top to bottom. You know, I like super believe that. At the same time, in the last year, I have to tell you, I have met so many newbies. I'm talking about people who haven't done a single run, and they're making their first run fresh frozen. And I just feel like somehow, like, just the instant clout is like just messing with their head or something, because they don't understand that fresh frozen can be a lot harder, and at the same time they are putting a lot of money on the line. But again, wanting to get that instant clout and be able to flex like they've done something, they jumped in to do this fresh frozen. And like, this is for me not about cured versus fresh frozen, because I'll do both of them, but I just feel like people should start off with cured, because again, as Kirk said, you have to be able to be willing to lose a lot of shit, like lose a lot of shit in order to be good.
Well, I'll tell you, the funniest thing when fresh frozen happened, because I was right in the middle of it all, people going from using dry material. People loved bubble bags when they used dry material because they got real returns. And now they're using this shit that's really 4 times its weight in water. And so, like, you're lucky to get a 3 or a 4 or a 5 if it's really great. Whereas, you know, like when you're pulling that actual 5 in dried material, that is a 20% yield. And let me tell you, when you pull that out of a 20 gallon, like 90 micron bag, there is something beautiful about that that just can't be compared. All the first hash I made was all bone dry material. The first full melt I ever made was from bone dry material. So now it's not really known in the world of making hash. A lot of people who are into it are constantly asking, is it possible to make, like, can you use dry material? It's like, of course you can use dry material when it's been grown actually like baller style and the genetics is super on point. That resin shines regardless of whether it's fresh frozen and I'm also like, maybe I'm old school, but that whole fresh frozen thing, and I get the importance of it for a lot of people. These are the very terpenes we cured out of cannabis for decades. We cured them so when we smoked it, it wasn't caustic and harsh. And now it seems as though when people take dabs, they're looking for a caustic, harsh dab. It's just my opinion. I see it a lot out there.
I would say,
what's that?
I agree. I mean, I was going to say that I agree with that the cultivar, as far as the way we do it is air dried and then do a slow and patient cure on it, just to kind of let the resin speak in terms of its terpene profile. Really, when it comes to how loud it is with the terpene profile, we know the resin's there, and we'll take the time. Honestly, I feel like the cured resin bubble hash really speaks truth for what the cultivar is. Mm-hmm. And like, I agree with you. There's a lot of fresh, poppin', zesty, you know, terpene heavy and really isolated in the fresh frozen state, which I do a little fresh frozen work also. But our majority is cured resin, because as a breeder into the cultivation to see what the strain really is in its patient true essence, and you know, that I believe that's how we like the cured resin, to see, let the plant speak and just finish out the full way to maturity it needs to. Yeah,
I like that. Welcome, Colin and Archive Fletcher in the house.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Damn, how's
everybody doing tonight?
It's been a bit since I've seen Fletcher, like, for real. I'm kind of like barely recognizing you right now, man, and it's going good. Colin, thanks for asking and welcome.
Right on.
I know.
This is This is a great topic. I remember when I first got bubble bags from you, Marcus, that was, gosh, maybe your first set ever. I still have the set. It's that long, the 25 bag. That was that
The
real long
sock.
one.
Was it
Yeah.
pink? Was it pink?
It was kind of pink, man. I could probably go and dig it up
So
and
that
find
was
it.
a 2001, and the reason
Yeah.
that bag was pink is it signified the birth of my daughter,
That's beautiful.
who's
So
now 18 years old.
yeah, so 18 years ago, that was my first set from you. And all I did was wash dried material, because at the time that's all we never even thought to freeze material. It just wasn't in our thought process at that point in time. But to the point the other guy was making about the dried heads are really important to give you a true essence of what that particular progeny can actually do for you long term, because drying, there's several ways to do all of this to get to that end goal, to get that maximum terpene profile that you're looking for. And there's really no wrong way to do it, but it's just personal preference. And I find today, I like the mix of both personally. I think that there's a lot to learn from fresh frozen, and then there's a tremendous to take away from your dried material. But I think right now, what I'm doing now is all fresh frozen, and I'm starting to do drying times and trying to back myself back into dry material itself. And that's a long process, but it's been really interesting seeing the yields and the results.
I'm definitely pro both of them. I just definitely say if you really want to see what your resin is made of, dry that shit out. Run it through some dry sift screens or some water hash bags, and just of course you can do it fresh through bags and whatnot. But it's nice to have that idea of what it can do. And there's also something to be said that the way the resin breaks off when it's been properly cured, and when the head has been allowed, like Skunkman talked about on Hash Church last Sunday, sort of to raisin out a little bit, and to not be that big fresh water balloon, but to start raisining out a little bit and kind of getting pruned up a little bit. And that just makes it so the head becomes so much easier to snap off. And there's something to be said for that as well.
I think it's a lot really strain specific too, more so than, there's certain things that wash well fresh frozen. There's stuff that does well dry there. And in my personal opinion, at least, is that a lot of it has to do with the concentration of terpenes versus THC inside the head. So just like alcohol can prevent water from freezing, if the terpene content inside the head is too high, it's not going to freeze. And you'll see this when you make a lot of BHO and stuff like that. Certain varieties, the slabs literally will not freeze just because the terpene content's so high. And considering we can only get water to 32 degrees, really, or maybe 31 or whatever, you're going to have a hard time getting varieties that have thin cuticles and high terpene content to not just break apart and basically become part of the water. Or in certain cases, I've even seen the heads are still really sticky at freezing temp, or 32 degrees or whatever your cold water's at, and they'll stick together and it'll be stuck in your 220 bag. Like the whole bottom of the 220 bag will be gold. Just full of gold, but there's no real way to extract it because you can't get the heads to break apart again. And certain strains, when you dry them, they shrink together and then the heads become these little balls. And when you're washing dry, those balls will break off, but they're well over 220 microns, so you're just never able to catch them.
These are the problems of our trade.
Totally agree. It's fun. I've been washing for the past month, maybe 30 pounds a day, something like that. And we're seeing all kinds of different varieties, washing, and a lot of the CBD varieties, we're seeing a major yield in the 25 and 45 and really nothing in the 90 and 73. So to your point, that's so true.
Yeah, it's every strain is different, whether it's better, there's certain varieties. Like I used to have a white rhino cross with skunk number 1. it made the best dry sift and full melt from dry trim. I mean, Bubble Man, that was that photo that Shroomy sent to you back in the day that was the screen like this with the two bubbles on both sides of the screen, probably like 2004 or 5 on the Fresh Headies website.
Yeah, I remember it.
That was
Double
dry
dome.
sift. Yeah, that was dry sift just from sifting in a Keith box, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just really the heads broke off really easily, and they didn't have a really high terpene content, so they're really easy to work with. And at the time, I was using all the power in my apartment or condo for growing, so I didn't run any heat. So 45 degrees, 50 degrees inside your house, pretty decent fucking working environment.
I mean, you don't have to talk to me. I live in Canada, bro. So we got like 8 months of that shit, like all day long. It's like,
Well, I'm not far from you, that's for sure.
that is very true. Well, I've moved to a reasonable part of Canada. I was just visiting Manitoba, and it was minus 37 when I was there. So
Wow.
Yeah, well, maybe there's a way to make hash in negative 37. I mean, one thing that I've thought would be interesting, although I don't know if there's a reasonable way to do it, but so let's say you have these lower temperature varieties that, like, let's say they would wash if you could get your washing liquid to 0 degrees or negative 15, right? So if you had like salt to your water or a glycol bath instead of water, there's like a million different things you could do to prevent the water from freezing, but would you be able to wash that out afterwards? And that's kind of an interesting concept. I don't know if it's actually applicable. But what other liquid could you use that's not water that freezes at a lower temperature, has a lower freezing point? So that you could have varieties that don't wash at 32 degrees, maybe wash in that.
right. I got to admit, there haven't been too many plants I couldn't wash. Not so many that I'd start designing methodologies to. I mean, maybe when Napro releases like a 10% terpene strain or something, I guess it'll become more of a issue. But I got to admit, like at this point in time, even after last Sunday when we all just named a few cultivars that washed really well, I began to realize there is a lot of cannabis that you can grow that will produce beautiful resin and give you nice yields, beautiful terpene profiles, and it's being done on a daily basis by just even the people on this panel right now.
Yeah, I know.
So many names I didn't even recognize, dude. Like you probably would, as you have your finger more on that pulse. But
I just know a lot of varieties that are really excellent flowers to smoke, but don't really make very good hash, dry trim or fresh frozen, but are really wonderful flowers. And you can breed those varieties and eventually find one that has the flavor and washes. But I was just from it'd be a good science experiment is all I'm saying, right? If you had something that didn't wash at 32 degrees, you were able to get your liquid now, let's say it's salt water, to 15 degrees, and now it does wash because you've reached that point of where the head is actually freezing. It'd be interesting just to see if that is what is causing the disparity between varieties.
We should wash haze. Somebody needs to grow some haze and wash some haze. I need some haze hash in my life.
Dude, I love haze. Haze is my son's middle name.
I have a jar of Schramm Dosido right here. It's pure lemon haze funk.
It's funny because
bro, save some coming up.
Yeah, Chris,
that Schramm dumps though.
Chris some of it.
The Schramm dumps though. Historically, it's been a great hash producer.
Oh yeah.
So that's I'm sure that outcross you made, especially the Dosido, is probably insane.
It retained all the terpenes, but bigger heads, a faster finish, just that kind of stuff.
I just actually exhaled some Seedsman haze, and that shit was lemony.
Ow!
Yeah, real good.
Yeah, the stuff that Fletch shared with me recently was really lemon haze heavy.
You know it's good when you ask someone what did that taste like, and they say another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, brother.
Got room
I've
for
got
another
some
one.
of his lemon peel I'm cheaping on now.
Beautiful. Well, I'm going to pause out if someone wants to take over the conversation for a few
I was
minutes while
gonna
I hit up
say,
this
I was
banger.
gonna add to the resin texture conversation part was what we do here with some of the ones that don't wash as well. I don't really cultivate too many like that because you know what my aim is, but when we find ones like CBD ones or some lemony profiles, like some pinene lemony ones that don't wash too well, and we notice that they are really oily right off the touch, we like to make tinctures or salves or just like oils, you know, with those. They seem to be like water soluble. If I wash them, you know, a lot of the terps are just floating on top. Where, settle down. Where if we make it into, you know, some other type of product, it's, I think, a lot better and none of a waste. And I like to see that kind of happen too. It's like we come up with a strain list for hashes. Like, let's come up with a cultivar, list for, you know, tinctures and topicals and such. You know, that'd be really cool too. Oh, did I go mute? So.
No, you're good.
I was
Cool.
muted, answering you like this.
Okay, I was like, shit, did I have to repeat myself? But cool, yeah, that's like something that I always look at here as like as the grower when it comes down to harvest time, and we're growing so many new phenos. We have a tendency, we run a clones, we got our phenos that we like to, you know, we know what they're all about and how they grow, but then there's the new ones, and that's like more than half the garden all the time, and to just hunt through the new stuff is so fun, but it's a real trial and error. So getting better with that is now figuring out the parents and of the cultivars to know, you know, we're bringing hash plants and we're breeding into more hash plants, and it makes it a lot easier for sure. And to know what hash plants are what, I always let homies know. And I'm sure, you know, with the cultivar list that you guys were talking about the other day, like those type of strains, like if anybody looked up what those strains were and then looked at the parents of those strains, could really find out what I'm talking about pretty easily. But I think it's really cool to kind of know the difference. So it's like we're already avoiding to like waste time or waste material. And like I kind of search at harvest time. I go out there in the field and I work everything by hand, like kind of like charas rub it at first. And I wanted to talk about that too, is some hand rub hash, because that shit's really fucking next level if you want to talk about that, which I'll put on next. But like when, you know, you're searching for the hash plants, I really like to find the ones that are you could feel the heads like on your fingers, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And yeah, that's the key.
And I also thought I share that same sentiment where I look at the parent stock that was used before even considering any seeds at all. That's super important to me.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking like over a year of work easily, you know, if you're just doing it indoor, if you're doing it outdoor, like probably year and a half, maybe 2 years of work just to potentially find something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's an unspoken thing. I feel like that doesn't get talked about. People that find those phenos, you know, it's so much work to find something that is actually washes and checks all the boxes and that you want to keep running.
Yeah, I think I have 4 in my stable that I've kept all this time out of all the time that I've been washing, and those 4 are with me still to this day. So it's hard out there, man.
Well, it's getting even more difficult because you know, everyone kind of claims that sharing is caring, and is like, oh yeah, you know, I like to share the genetics and get them out to people, right up until you ask them for a cut. And I gave a lot of cuts away over the course of the last 5 years, so I feel like I can say this. You know, I had cuts given to me by all sorts of wonderful breeders, and never once did I feel like it was my duty to interview the people I was giving them to make sure that they were going to be good enough to receive this particular cut. And there was a ton of people in my city who felt this way and actually got quite upset with me for just giving them away. And I was always like, I'd be like, well, what if, you know, this guy that supposedly doesn't deserve the clone, what if he gets it, but then one of the first people he gets it to is like a sick little girl with epilepsy. The profile just is so you know, and I'm trying to get him to see, like, listen, like the world is not quite as limiting as you think it is. There are these connections that can occur in ways that you can't possibly fathom. And the only way to kind of support that is to do good. And doing good is sharing genetics. Yeah, give them out. Because I can't handle listening to people who lost their genetics while hoarding them. It's like, oh, here, let me pull the tiniest little violin out and play you a song. I'm so sorry that you were an asshole and didn't give your cuts away to anyone. And now you've lost them and you have no one to call and say, hey, can I get my cuts back? So that's important.
In AE 77's words, if you want to save a strain, give it away.
Yeah. I mean, shit, it's the crazy.
The man himself, man.
But don't give it away like this. Okay, you can have this cut, but here's a long list of like your Ozzy Osbourne, and you have a rider if you're going to play the venue or something. It's like, I'm going to need the red M&Ms. I'm going to need, it's like, come on, man. If you give someone a cut, just don't have anything tied to that. Looks nice, iPad. Looks nice, Kush Kirk. You're about to crush that out or what? Do some monster
excuse me.
dabs. That's okay. It was just right in both of my ears, like in stereo. I love that there's no one in this room that understands that more than Colin, because he's literally a professional musician and does like studio music work and like has headphones on all the time. So I know he appreciated that. Even though
sorry, brother. I went for the mute and I just missed it.
You know what? It's all good, dude. I'm happy to be here talking about hash with you guys. I liked what.
Look at this iPad, man. What are you dabbing up there, brother? It looks great.
Oh, he's muted. Let me unmute him.
That looks lovely. What is that? What cultivar?
It's puppy breath. Puppy breath is Mendo breath Black Dog by BioVortex. He bred this one out last year, and I grew like a few phenos here. I think like 5 or 6 different phenos of the new stuff, and this is one of them.
And what is that?
I didn't clone this one. It was a good one. It feels great. It tastes great. Melts amazing.
What is it that you're holding up? The Micron.
Puppy. Micron. It's the 120 and the 70 combined from So it's underneath the 150 bag to the 70 bag.
It's the 70, the 90, and the 120.
Yeah. I mix most of them. I really don't. I just kind of separate the 40, and I separate like the 150. It's usually outdoor. I got particulates flying in, so like the particulates are just more abundant than like. But this is outdoor resin. This has been rained on for every month. This was at negative or not negative. It was at 20 degrees for a few nights before I harvested it. This plant went through some shit here in the valley.
Wow. Excellent. Well, thanks for sharing. It looks beautiful.
It's so clean. It got washed every night.
There you go.
Yeah, dude. There you go. Some of I will say shout out to BioVortex. Hands down is one of the dankest like breeders for sure. All the shit that I ran from him was amazing. I did the banana dog as well, which is the banana OG with the SFB black dog. Just unreal. Just hard to get his stuff for sure. But if you can, it's worth it.
Nice. Good to have those tips. That's really what hash makers want to know. I mean, they want to know every possible secret they can possibly know.
I find a lot of the time it's not too hard to find varieties that wash well or yield well. And vice versa, you'll find ones that smoke well, but as flowers, but it's really hard to find ones that are really good flowers and really good washers. That's been my experience. It's pretty tough. Just in general.
And I just haven't smoked flowers in 19 years.
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%. You know, OGKB is one that seems to wash really well as well. Like that times most things is going to do well in washing.
Yeah,
in my experience.
It's a terrible plant.
Exactly. It's a terrible, exactly.
It's hard to find something that does it all.
I've had that for 5 years now. I rock it every year just for head staff mostly. And then the select few homies that come through and want some shit. It's straight medicine though. Like when it's hardcore medicine.
It does considerably better outside than it does inside too.
Yep.
And it does way better in if you like, in the like a hugel or some like real like thick soil. That just doesn't need much water. Like what we got kind of going on in the backyard here, it's pretty gnarly.
Yeah. So, what are you guys washing right now? Like, what's some of your favorite cultivars that you guys are running that seem to get good yields? And what yields are you guys getting out of those? I think that would be a good topic to kind of go over.
Yep.
Me, I'm a lot of the time I'm running like multiple phenos, so Chris would know better. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're running a lot of Moonbow, a lot of lemon cane, a lot of lemon peel. Moonbow and lemon cane and the lemon peel are absolutely my favorite ones to wash right now at the shop. Moonbow between the 99 and the 112, those two phenos give like 4.5 to 5% back. And 3.5 of that sits between the 149 and the 90U, and the rest is just 70-40, and you're like 180 and stuff like that. And it's all you're collecting a bunch of it as full melt, so everything presses back between like 85 and 92%. So they're fantastic to work with. We do washes all hand stirred between 10 to 15,000 grams at a time. And so we're pulling massive patties off those. They do really well, especially the lemon peel. Like if you're looking for a strain that's like very heavy on the lemon terps, it washes extremely well. It's not the easiest to get, but
I was gonna say no one can get their hands on that one, bro. Come on.
yeah, it's not the easiest to get. You know what I mean? Come through the shop and you can come get it. You know what I mean? But other than that, you got to really know somebody.
Yeah.
But it dumps. It's really good. And the lemon cane is the one that we took down to like that Ego Clash and took first place in hash with. That one produces really crazy full melt for a strain with that terpene profile.
Cool.
No doubt. If you took first at the Ego Clash, how that was quite an event, I heard.
Dude, it was crazy. That was my first time in California, so I didn't really know what to expect. But it was out in Mendocino. It was just like piss and rain, tons of mud everywhere, but it was a phenomenal event, man. It was tons of fun. There was so much good melt everywhere. I didn't get to see a lot of the rosin that was there, but I definitely fucked with a lot of the full melt that was brought to the table, and it was quality. There's maybe
Sweet.
one or two jars that I was not really stoked on, but it was all really good stuff. And it was funny. There's a lot of papaya heavy crosses. So it was interesting to see that everyone, is kind of leaning towards those fruity terpenes right now.
Yeah.
Those Dutch varieties always made the best hash. I don't know if that was like a product of Sam's selective breeding with skunk number 1, most likely, but
Right.
Man, a lot of those varieties really, like I said, one of the best washing varieties I ever had from dry trim was White Rhino cross skunk number 1. And I mean, it did phenomenal.
There's some skunk going at the farm right now that's probably going to be dedicated towards hash, like some fresh frozen here soon. So I'll report back on numbers for that one shortly. But it was like granddaddy skunk or granny skunk we got going right now. So it'll be interesting to see what that does.
I've been raving this year about this weasel skunk from Nature Farm that we grew. We grew 8 plants, and every single one of them made awesome hash. Just greasy and unreal yields, like near 20% probably. So I'm really impressed. Really gassy, like race fuel terps.
I just did a London Bridge. London Bridge. Has anyone smoked London Bridge?
No.
I've seen those seeds around and the cut being passed around, but I haven't. Is that London Pound Cake cross, or what's the lineage on that?
Pound Cake and Sunset Sherbet. It was from
Wow.
Jigga apparently, and I got it from a friend. It just I haven't smoked it yet, and I'm pretty interested. It's kind of like on a next level gassy cookie, kind of giving us some GMO notes in there.
Nice. That's a favorite, fan favorite over here.
That one's
watch some
cool. I got crazy long list in my head. What else I got? Golden Strawberries. This one is just a 20% on dry and 5.5 wet. That one's amazing. That one's straight strawberry shortcake. And what else? What do you got? Guava punch. That's my new one that I made from breeding the strawberry guava from Oni with purple punch do-si-do. I don't know who the seed pack though came from. It was pretty much a pollen chuck. I took the male from a buddy's grow. I took the male because he was going to throw it out, and I was like, no way. I saw potential in it, and I brought it home, stressed it out, and ended up seeing resin on the male. So I knew it was a keeper. Then I just brought it into the whole 32 plant straw guava room and knocked up the whole room. Ended up washing the whole room and collecting seed at the same time. And that shit's been a really good fucking one. Has anyone else done that too? That's been pretty freaking cool. That I grew a whole room of seed, 4 lights, 32 plants, and I got like 10,000 maybe more seeds and a whole room of fresh resin.
That's pretty crazy. No, I've never done anything like that.
No, neither have I, man.
And to
I
add
ran
on,
your guava punch though.
I took all the fucking wash material and I put it out in the hoop house, and I put plastic over the hoop house, and they all sprouted up out of the nugs, and I let that thing grow into the sticky shake, what it was this year. If anyone saw the sticky shake that I did, that was all just straw guava mixed phenos. There was like 35 different phenos in there. We had like a party inside the bush.
I mean, I would definitely hope that no one ever did do a seed batch and not make hash with the material, because if they didn't, that would just crush my soul to know that people are just pulling these mad seed harvests off and be like, what should we do with all this bud? Just fucking get rid of it, man. Like, we can't have that shit lying around.
Well, I bet most people are. I mean, no offense, like, it's hard because you don't want to get the seeds wet or something and you want to sell the seed, but like, yeah, it was like it's definitely, my intention was to wash the whole room first, and then I just saw the opportunity arise with the male, and then it kind of got a little out of control. Like, I only brought it in there for a damn day, and I was like, oh, well, who the hell knows, how much pollen can come off of it, and the whole room was dusted, full blown. Yeah. So it was badass though. I mean, Ja provides. So
Ja does provide.
Yes,
that is the truth. Hope to you ever make it down to the island, down to Jamaica?
Not yet. I got a bunch of homies though that are ready to pick me up off the airport and bring me to the Rasta village. Shout out to them.
In Montego Bay?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I haven't talked to him in a good month and a half, or shit, it's been like a year and a half now.
It's a great country to make hash in, I'll tell you. Some of the best hash I ever made in my life was outdoor grown cannabis in Jamaica. And that'd be awesome. I'd love to go do that.
It's hard to get away from the farm. We're just like full blown busy here all the time.
Yeah, of course. It's the life of the farmer. It's not like you're going on mad vacations.
Yeah. I'm sure you know more than some of the folks, but we have like a full blown, we have a bunch of animals and shit to take care of. So that's why. And 5 acres that we like fully will utilize like every bit of it now. So it's pretty cool. I always tell everyone like that are homies to come on out and come kick it for a damn day and like just relax. It's like paradise out here.
It's definitely paradise. It's so beautiful out there, man. I love it.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it absolutely is. It's the greatest place I've ever been to for sure.
That's awesome. Wow, it makes me kind of hurt a little bit because I can't come to the U.S., but maybe one day they'll figure it out and they'll just allow cannabis to be federally legal, and then I'll just be like, woohoo! Me and all these other people will be like, we're coming down. And then
I bet
wait.
You hide in the back of Josh and Kelly's truck when they're like all that shit in there. You could get down here, bro. Come on.
Oh my God, go across with Josh and Kelly and Sky, and that would be
dude, just hide in a bag, for the border.
What are you doing in here? Oh, hey, what's up?
You'll just be like ripping it.
Dude, the last time I tried to get over the border, I was driving my Volkswagen van, potentiating my stereotype, and I got to the border, and the customs guy was like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm just going down to California to see the Grateful Dead, man. And I shit you not, this guy from the middle of nowhere, middle of Canada, looked at me and said, "The Grateful Dead? Jerry Garcia? Pull over there." And that was I never got across the border. Like, I actually ended up giving all of those concert tickets away to hippies that I met in the forest in British Columbia, because I was so bummed. I had these mail order tickets. They were like the shiny and sparkly ones for like, geez, what shows were they for? They were for like, what's the big Cali one? The big, what the fuck was the California venue they
The
played?
Fillmore?
No, it was an outdoor venue. It was all summer, so it was like they played a Portland show. I had tickets to see Jerry with Merle in like Seattle. It was like this, nice 4 or 5 run thing. And anyway, that was the start of my not going to the U.S. So I haven't been down there since Fish '98 at the Gorge. That was my last trip to. So sorry to get off topic. We're back on hash here. A lot of people do smoke hash at Grateful Dead and Fish concerts. We could talk about that.
It's true. We can. So, you guys were touching on drying before, and I think one thing I wanted to talk about was drying times and pumps. Value. And there's a company out there called LeBoyd, and I just want everyone to be aware of this, and I just want to share this if you don't already know this. And
How do you spell that?
pump, you're just gonna have it's LEYBOD, LeBoyd. They're very expensive pumps, but they will allow you to get at a really a much more consistent vacuum. So you're not actually pulling all the desirables out. So I've been ABing this for a really long time, and I just think it's valuable information for everybody to have, because I think it's important to just share it. They're a great company. You can just reach out to them, but it'll allow everything to do. I mean, you can do what I would do in, let's say, 40 or 72 hours in much less time with much higher quality. And it's just a lovely, addition to a not so great, setup. It's like bringing a machine gun basically to a knife fight. It's that much.
So it's reducing the amount of time that you're in the vacuum. Is that what you're
Yeah, exactly, because it gets to a much deeper vacuum.
Gotcha.
So
So what temperatures are you running on that then?
So 30.
And what's the Militor?
Say that again.
And what's the Militor? What's the vacuum pressure that you actually do get down to?
So the vacuum pressures that we're getting down to for the LeBoyd, I don't have my notes in front of me. Let me see if I can pull it up. Let me see if I can pull this up for you guys.
I also want to talk about ice and what you guys like for ice. I love Craft Cold. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of those machines. They make really wicked ice. It's just really nice, solid RO machines hook up to them, and they make really nice cubed ice. I've always found that there's certain ice that just wasn't what I wanted to use if I could avoid it, like the chip ice, that you get in hotels, and cheap store-bought ice, any ice with fluoride. I always tried to avoid that sort of stuff, and even had quite good luck, surprisingly, back in the day in Switzerland, when we made a lot of our ice by freezing just like all sorts of different things that we then hammer and smash. The ice was quite sharp and big chunks and smaller chunks, but it really seemed to do the job on breaking the resin off. I think that it's something that people don't always look at. They get used to their process. They always use the same ice, and I'll suggest to them, have you ever just switched your ice up a little bit? Like maybe like how cold the ice is, how clear the ice is it foggy? Like what's the pH of the water? Like there's quite a bit that goes into simply making ice. And I just wondered some of your thoughts on that.
Let me get this.
Yeah, you can come back when you find it, dude. I just figured while you were looking, I'd keep the conversation going on ice, and we can
keep it going. But yeah,
I
just don't have the numbers in front of me, guys. But it's like it's double to triple what a normal pump can do. And it's going to it's Here, I'm gonna share this with you guys right here. Just give me a second. I gotta paste it.
Sure,
in
here, let me put you on full there.
Hold on.
And then we'll get back to ice because that shit's important.
So at the
No.
farm, we make our own ice with the same water we wash with, and that's been really helpful. You know, like makes 400 pounds of ice for us a day. The guy have helping me stir buckets, bags ice a ton of the time too. You know, and it helps. You know, being able to make your own ice with the same water that you're washing with. You know,
You use
Yeah,
water
that's-
chillers? Do you use water chillers to preserve that ice, or so you don't have to use so much?
the room that we wash in is extremely cold, so we
Right.
don't really have to use too much ice. It stays about 42 to 45 degrees.
And do you store your water in that room?
The water is stored in that room, and the tap where the water comes out of is also in that room. Everything that I use is based out of that room. Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, also here in Oregon, I mean, our water right now probably comes out like what, 40, like upper 40s, mid 40s right now. It's pretty cold anyways.
It's very cold water for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's great being able to wash with 32 and rinse with 32-degree water. That helps tremendously.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing how much ice you go through if you're not taking the temperature of the water, and your water is a little warmer than it needs to be, and you're doing big batches. It will just melt your ice like nobody's business.
You eat up a ton of ice, absolutely. Yeah, when you're doing like 10 to 15K batches at a time of fresh frozen, yeah, you eat up a ton of ice if you're not in a cold environment.
Yeah.
As well as it makes a lot more particulate if you have to have more ice in there. You need that room for the water to lubricate and kind of give that softening aspect to the wash.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing I noticed is washing in that cold room is I use a lot less ice, and it's a lot easier to stir those bigger buckets now because there's not 60 pounds of ice in there hurling around. You're only using like 10 to 20 pounds at a time now.
Yeah, maybe like 60 pounds for a whole wash, like in
for a
total.
whole batch. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But per bucket, you're maybe using 20 at a time. And it's a 44-gallon bucket with, like I said, 10 to 15K at a time. Depends on the material.
Well, as you get into larger systems, it becomes quite important to have things like water chillers, because otherwise the ice production just really reduces your economic viability of the whole project, working out and not turning into this overpriced product that someone's just going to have to pay for so much ridiculousness along the way. You want to be able to scale these things while not affecting the purity. I won't say quality, because what we work with as hash makers is really more purity. Quality is what the genetics and the growers have given to us. We are the ones who unveil it. So what we unveil is really dependent upon what, the work that they did, the months and months of variables that they fought versus the, it could be a day, it could be a week of variables that we face as hash makers, unless it's a real big batch and it maybe takes you longer than that. But can't compare it to the growers and the variables that they have to kind of deal with and navigate over the course of the 3+ months of some of these cannabis cultivars flowering out, and then being even some of the like not running fresh frozen, but curing that out for another little while and getting that into ready to process, and then making hash and curing that out. I mean, man, the first time I smoked Sam's hash, I'm quite certain that material was probably cured for 3 or 4 months. And then the hash itself was probably 3 or 4 months by the time I smoked it. And it was, shocking to me in 1995. Shocking.
Yeah, but being the grower too, it also helps eliminate any errors that might come up, because you can think about it like, okay, I did this time, changed up this, had a little lower temperatures, flushed for a little bit longer or whatever, this season was a bit warmer, a bit colder at the end, and you have a little more intimate relationship with that resin head and kind of understand what it's potentially going to be doing for you.
Yeah.
There's nothing more beautiful than walking through the garden and seeing those heads just stick out from a mile away, and you just know.
Trust me. I'll tell you, if you really want a bonus tip from me to all of you, a really important factor on hash making and cannabis growing is being able to see what's going on microscopically. And if you can get yourself a really good, something that allows you to go in and spend time in that macro world of trichomes and just really, exactly, you know, getting right into, I've been doing this since 2008, and I can't tell you enough that it's really a worthwhile, it's what taught me about trichomes. I mean, while we've been on this show, Mark Scaldone sent me an article called, he said, did you see this? And it's called Chemical Factories. What's the subtitle here? Okay, Chemical Factories, Cannabis Trichomes Under the Microscope. A recent study has revealed the internal structures of cannabis biochemical factories, trichomes, and note that these hairs can be used as a measure of potency. It's like, you're kidding. Oh my God, the guys at university figured it out finally, that these cannabis trichome hairs are what determine the potency on the cannabis plant. And then they go on to, I guess, claim that for the first time ever, they're explaining what's going on inside these little, I haven't read the whole thing, and maybe they have figured out some new things, but this information's been out there for quite a long time in a multitude of publications. Even myself and Jeremiah from Cannabis Culture wrote an article in 2000, and it might have been 3, it might have been 5 or 6, called Inside the Trichome. And it very much explains what's going on inside the trichome and the different types of organelles and the vacuoles and the plastids and the phenols and the hydrocarbons and how they push up into the upper membrane and cook with UVB light and produce CBGA. And then from there, the entire cannabinoid and terpene profile. So that information has probably been out there maybe since the 60s or 70s even. I'm not too sure, but definitely something worth checking out. If you guys want, I will post it both in our private chat here with the panelists. If I can figure out how to send you guys all, oh, here we go. I'll send that to you guys. And then I'll send it to everyone in the YouTube chat as well. So I haven't actually looked over here in a second, but I guess we got 440 people watching with us right now, which is just over 420. That's pretty cool. Let me send this to them.
To compound on your point a little bit too, I've noticed with lighting, indoor with lighting, grows that have higher UVA and UVB lights, they actually do have usually both higher THC percentages and more melty strains and larger resin heads usually.
Well, this mystery is going to be unsolved or solved, I should say, in the next decade, maybe less, where, you know, you get a lot more people being able to do this and engage and keep, and, you know, start kind of compiling this data. And there's going to be all sorts of different softwares that are developed that allow that data to be, you know, sort of amalgamated or made out, created into more of a digital landscape that makes it for easier navigation. So I'm pretty excited for the data to come out on all these the differences in the cultivars, and why is this one waxy and this one's this certain way, and why is it that this one's not washing well. Like these would be interesting mysteries to me to just have a full understanding, and I'm quite certain that science will answer the majority of them.
I mean, to go off what Bubble Man was saying, like a cheap, like $120, 20 to 80x stereo microscope is like one of the best tools you can have for sure.
Yeah.
Just not only for hash making, but just for growing, for identifying pests and all that kind of stuff. And they're real cheap, like a stereo microscope. You don't need the compound microscopes or anything like that.
Well, it lets you start navigating that different world where you're so, when I started shooting macro cannabis, I first of all couldn't believe how beautiful it was. It really blew me away at how just beautiful it was inside the plant. I was blown away at that. But then I started like, well, what is, why is that different from that? And what is that called? And so then I started, like Chimera was really helpful, and Skunkman Sam and Rob Clark, guys that had some history with this, that had worked in labs and that had been doing this since the 80s and understood some of the important terminologies that if you were going to be able to even search the internet and you didn't know the terminology of a particular trichome, like a cystolithere even for that matter, it was very hard to describe it into Google and get any accuracy or find anything on it whatsoever. So the macro photography for me let me get to a point where I was like, okay, I need to understand what all these things are. And then, starting to do that research was really helpful. I guess nowadays, we have it so good. You just go on Instagram and check out the hashtag, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you got all the information you need about trichomes. It's it's kind of a crazy thing in a good way to be able to, share information in such an easy way and connect with so many people that it's how a lot of us have connected here right now through social media.
So Duchess, so it's between 600 and we're maxing out at 900 mTOR. That's the deepest vacuum that we've attempted to do.
Oh, okay. Well, the scientific
But it
can go like significantly lower than that. I mean, it can maintain.
Yeah, I'm getting much
50,
lower than that.
like way lower than that. You want to bring that number as low as possible. So if you have an updated system, by all means get lower than that, because you can definitely. I've had it sitting at 170 mTOR. So
yeah, it sits about 125 to 215 for us. We use the pharmaceutical units. And I can dry 200 to 300 gram trays, in 12 to 24 hours. Just depends on the strain,
So that's the top end, right? And then the numbers that we have for when we go into vacuum are ranging from 25 to 50.
That's what it's getting down to.
Yeah, that's what we're getting down to. So I'm just giving you guys a range of like where it can go.
That's
for sure.
more to the story. Okay, that's more.
Yeah. So and then actually, and my cousin, he just texted me. He's like, "Dude, it can go down to 10." So
that's crazy. There's also a chart online that you can Google and check that'll give you a reference point of when you pull down to that kind of millitor in temperatures, the terpenes still boil off when you're in those ranges. So it's kind of a very fine line of how low do you really want to go and how long do you want to sit at that point, because terpenes will boil off. Obviously, check your freeze dryer water. Everyone knows that there will be terpenes left over in that, but I've been toying around with that myself. Like how low do you want to go and how long do you want to have it sit there? Because are you really starting to degrade the purity of the product at that point, or are you just pulling out more terpenes at that point?
The thing.
Well, what about the temperature? Because I mean, like, I have to tell you, I've been very surprised that people are in the 50s. I'm never over 35 degrees.
Yeah, I set my trays to 15.
At 35 no matter what.
Yeah, we're as low as you can go.
But I'm never over 35.
How low can you go?
It's all about as low as you can go for
5 or 0.
time.
I can't remember.
But
I'm waiting for Harvest Right to release a unit where you can set each shelf to its own temperature, because that would be ideal.
I don't think they'll ever do that. Talking to LeBoyd, I don't even know if I'm even pronouncing that. I'm probably botching that name. But you should talk to them. They're really great guys. They've helped me out a lot, and I've definitely
much appreciated. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. All we need is a software engineer, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, dude, it's we're getting there, and we're gonna get there really quickly if we can all just kind of share this information,
I don't think you could realistically have different shelf temps in the same vacuum space though, because it's all like the variations aren't going to be, you're not going to be able to like make sure that this shelf and this shelf, when it's in the same vacuum, are actually 10 degrees different from each other. I think it'd be really hard to do that.
Well, unless you're getting a $500,000 lyophilization oven, like a true pharmaceutical unit, 200 kilos at a time.
It's really just what the setting of the shelf would be then at that point. It's not necessarily.
They become independent. They're independent.
The sensor, having sensors that could detect that and maintain that in one vacuum would be really difficult. I mean, the most effective thing I've found.
I imagine so. Yeah.
Raccoons, I have never seen that, but you might be able to find, like Marcus said, there's scientific ones out there that can probably do more. But I'm not privy to any of that stuff, man. I don't have the.
When batches get that big for me, I have 2 freeze dryers, luckily, and they're both 7 shelves. So if I need to set one freeze dryer to a totally different temperature than the other one, there's the option to do that. I haven't really ran into that all that much,
Well, check out Mill Rock Technology, lyophilizers from laboratory to production. That's an interesting company that does a whole variety of like a ton of different laboratory style freeze dryers, research development freeze dryers, pilot freeze dryers, you know, small production freeze dryers. Like,
For sure. I would love to check them out. Thank you
yeah,
for
yeah.
sharing.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's big boy toys in the sense like, wow, like I don't know if they make like a $4,000 or $5,000 unit, but it's definitely neat to know about and you know, see maybe one day that technology will get shrunk down. I think the harvest rights are cool, but I think they're like they're more like of a toy compared to, you know, some units.
Right. They could be a lot more refined.
Yeah, I totally agree. They're kind of slow too. So it's, you know, and it's the other thing is, you know, getting down to temperature sooner is really important for me. So, because it cuts down on the time that you have to, the whole thing has to switch over to do all the functions it needs to do. And, you know, as you said, we need a software engineer to get that stuff fixed out, you know?
Yeah. They do have really weird things with like the screen that aren't even like buttons that are notable. You just have to know to press in that area and you can set, you know, from like, you know, it does crazy weird stuff for sure. They need to be a lot more automated and made for what we're doing, you know?
Totally.
So I want to hear a little bit from some people that haven't been able to talk, because some of us have, you know, loud voices and strong personalities, and some of us are the quiet guys in the background. And yeah, I'm talking to you, Flav, and Pua, and Best Friend Farms, and even Great Lakes. A little bit heavy ice for sure. You haven't been able to say much, so just, you know, we've got about a half an hour more. So there, I'm sure each of you had little things you might have wanted to talk about. If you want, that's a great time to steer the conversation. Any one of you that feels like bringing something up and saying, no, bringing something to the conversation, because I know you guys all do.
I brought my weekly list of washes for our cultivars here for the last week that we washed, if you want to hear them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Give it to us.
Okay. We washed a couple phenotypes of 91 Royale this last week. Swamp Boys gear. They we ran a couple things there. It's also the guava jelly, 2 different phenotypes, and yeah, great results on both of those. The guava's super loud, fruit forward, and 91 Royale. One of the phenos seemed to be more on the tip of the, I guess, lemon. Is it lemon Royale? So whatever went into that, I think a GMO lemon tree or lemon something. I'm not sure exactly. We ran a pineapple field from Dynasty Genetics also, and a couple of our own types. Some of that kosher kush back to Mac and Headband, again, a different pheno. I got one that we're calling Gorilla Food that I bred. That's the Gorilla Glue to Mac to a cake and cookies and cream. And yeah, I don't know if I mentioned a couple GMO Tina phenotypes, and I guess it was a 91 Royale. One of the phenos just dumped it down the most, really. Garbagey too, had that GMO rotten kind of thing on it. So, garbage truck dump.
Nice. That's what's up. It's always nice to hear about washes and, you know, what came out and what's going on.
How'd the pineapple fields do, the Dynasty stuff?
This phenotype in particular, this was actually the Cali Snapple pheno. We had a Miss Universe pheno and a Cali Snapple pheno. I decided the Miss Universe is really nice. It was just kind of like that really sweety kind of pineapple, and this the number 3 we call it, but the Cali Snapple pheno, definitely. I used to grow a lot of Cali Miss back in the day, and it has the same look on it, but it has that kind of overripe, but also a little sour underripe West Coast true pineapple turf that reminded me of the Gold Star pineapple I've run, Southern Humboldt. And yeah, it's actually, I think it's our first wash on that one, and this is from an indoor run, organic, you know, indoor living soil cycle. So I'll have more results on it coming in. We actually, I dry for 2 weeks, so at first I go for a 60 degree or a 50 degrees 50%, and then I'll shift my second week into 60 degrees 60%. And I kind of do my hash drying, air drying the same way. It takes me 2 weeks, it's a 2 weeks breakdown. So really from like when we're getting cured resin even material, or from when we cut the plants down, where it takes us a month before we even see in our cured resin bubble hash. So we're, I guess a couple weeks we'll know what the pineapple this pheno did more. And honestly, yeah, I'm not exactly sure. We run so many flavors on it. I'd have to just go back to the room to see what the resin's looking like right now, and what the date on it is for exactly the day we ran it. But
Nice.
yeah,
I feel really bad for you having to do all that.
it's horrible. It's so tough.
That's rough for sure. What about you, Flav? You got anything to share today, man? What's going on? You're making hash, squishing. Oh, you're on mute. Let me unmute you. There you go.
There you go. Well, I do run a lot of hazes, and they return like 1 to 2%, but they're very worth it, even though they've flowered for 14 weeks or so. It is my favorite hash to smoke. I mean, what do you add? I mean, you guys are talking all the right numbers for the freeze dryers and everything. I mean, I do vary depending on the resin. So I find a lot of the sativas have a lot drier resin even when you wash them in water. And so I vary the temperatures. I'll have 15 for those and 20 for most everything else. Other than that, I run, you know, the machine's relatively exactly the same. I mean, when you have so much knowledge sitting at, you know, right here, what can you really add compared to the people that a little more rah-rah than the rest of us?
You could puff a big bowl of hash out of a like Buck Marcel cola.
I have nothing here. I'm at work right now, so you know, I just came up from tending to the moms.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Taking care of business.
Yeah. It's nice to see
what moms are you working with?
Right now I have Congo, Original Haze, a Trop Sando that I really like, which is GMO Trop cookies. My favorite that I'm actually washing right now a lot too, that returns really good, like 5%, is the Afghani Bull Rider, the old Andy and Jeff Tech work from way back in the day.
Candy. Shout out to the San Diego Bull Rider boys.
And she dumps pretty good, and you know, melty as fuck. So yeah. But I got a lot. I could go through the list, but it's like 70 or 80 cultivar. So
well, just give us 10 more then.
Some old Northern Lights, some Super Skunk, Strawberry Cough, some Coastal Rose that my buddy grew, and this 101 Labs, who's just a local Sunshine Coast guy, but he's phenomenal. He does this other one that he calls the Miss Killer, that has it's King John Kush to old hash plant, and it's just has that soapy, carroty, earthy, fucking just amazingness to it that you didn't have since I was like, you know, 18, 19, like back in the, you know, like just before 2000. So yeah, it's phenomenal stuff. But
nice. Well, I feel lucky because I can go hit it.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm popping some archive right away that I got in the soak that are coming up, some Tire Fire.
Nice.
Cannot wait.
How's that Super Skunk you've got?
Pardon?
How's that Super Skunk?
Fantastic. Fucking phenomenal, actually.
That was always a really great variety from I guess Seed Bank.
No, for sure. Yeah, the old ones, I mean, I have a lot of old unpolluted genetics, you know, so it's nice.
It's nice to have unpolluted genetics.
I don't mean polluted by, you know, that sounded bad, but just
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, even, you know what?
And they are hybrids, but, you know, haven't been modern updates, let's call it, you know.
For sure.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It reminds me of my sort of rarest seed that I have in my collection. That I've been collecting seeds for almost 30 years, and probably my rarest that I have, and I got some good ones for sure. Like friends that own seed banks just send me their full collections, like just full. This is what my seed collection has, and I get like every seed that they have. So I have a big collection, but like one of my favorites is from an old internet friend called the Mullum Madman. And it was his father who would grow back in the day and was involved with producing the Mullumbimby Madness, which was just this crazy plant. He used to post pictures of it on Overgrow. It was like 18 feet wide and 12 feet high, and you'd get like 15 pounds of herb off of it, but like 10 would still be on the plant in smalls that he wouldn't even bother cutting out. He just make hash out of it. But I have seeds from his dad's collection. I also have his seeds from like his own version of it kind of thing. But he gave me like 30 seeds from his dad's original collection. And I have kept those things, geez, for the last 22 years.
Australia, for some reason, has the most diverse, like mutant type genetics that we've seen. Like the Mollivivi Madness, I think that supposedly had some Papua New Guinea something in it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, dude, like everything.
It's which is one of the most unique islands in the world too, in terms of genetic diversity.
Sure.
Then you have the duck's foot that came from out there.
Wally.
The ABC, right? The Australian bastard cannabis, which is the one that doesn't even look like weed. And one of the most interesting ones that's happened recently is the what is it? It's the one that looks like a fern. Yeah, right.
The freak show.
Yeah, freak show. Yeah, not, I don't think that one necessarily has anything to do with Australia, but in terms of like morphologically unique cannabis, 3 out of the 4 known really weird ones are from Australia, or 2 out of 3. It's just interesting.
Well, I don't see kangaroos anywhere else in the world either.
No, or duck-billed platypus.
Talk about some tripped out shit. It's just like
Duckfoot was the first. Yeah, the duckfoot was the first one I ever saw that ever had mutation. Ever.
Wally was posting that way long ago.
And I thought Wally was in Central America because of just the photos he used to post on Overgrow. I just assumed.
Dude, shout out to Wally Ducks
for sure.
Yeah.
Shout out to
Wally.
Shout out to Wally Ducks hair. Sorry, go ahead, Archive.
Yeah, I grew out some of those seeds. The duck's foot pure, the duck's foot blueberry. I can't remember what. There was one other cross that he had too. And I've also grown like Hawaii webbed indica, which seems potentially related or hybrid of something of that nature.
I was just going to quickly say that, shout out to Wally Duck for almost setting his hair on fire at one of the first Legends of Hash dinners that we ever threw in Amsterdam. And also shout out to Wally Duck for literally carrying like 75 pounds of ice on his head like a boss. And plus, like, I don't know, it was probably like 105 degrees in the shade in Jamaica when me, him, and Gypsy and Nirvana walked through the bush with a couple of Rastafarian dudes to the mountain of weed that was awaiting us. And it was like this hour plus long walk through the jungle to get to this mountain of weed. And we all had to take turns. And man, I'll tell you, both Gypsy and I were looking pretty red when that thing of ice was on our heads. But Wally, being from Australia, and he's a little guy, he's not a big dude. It was just like, it was just nothing. You could tell like the work ethic of an outdoor Australian guerrilla grower was no fucking joke, for real. Like that was legit. Wally's the kind of guy you want coming to visit on your farm, because he won't be sitting and hanging out on a hammock. He'll be like, I know exactly how this works, and I'm going to put in the work to make sure it keeps working. I appreciate people like that.
You go to Brandon's farm, he'll put you to work too.
That's what's up. Of course, as you should. You got to.
Those are big facts, yeah. I went down and learned how to make hash from Brandon, and it was like I spent the weekend with him, and it was not just making hash, it was like tending to the fields, feeding the animals, shoveling shit into the hugel. Like it was a bunch of work, and it was a ton of fun. I learned so much more than just how to make and isolate pure resin,
Well, because to him, that is making hash.
Exactly. I was
able to from the inside out.
From the inside out, yeah. It's a lifestyle at this point. Farming.
Thank you for sharing that with me, Kush. Thank you,
dude. Thank you for being like one of the true homies that deserved it and respects it and shit too. There's a lot of people. There's some fuckboys out there, I like to say, and fuck them. Yeah, I'm glad that you respected it. You did it right. You came correct. And that's what matters, man. I like to feel like teaching hash is like nighting at night and or kind of you have to chill with Master Roshi and you have to do the wax on, wax off, man. And when you learn the shit like that, then it's this upper level of respect. And that's what it's all about. Yeah, big love, right?
Bless, big time, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
That was my all-time favorite thing back in the day to do. Back in the early days when really it wasn't known. 9.9 out of 10 people I'd show it to would just be like, whoa, what is this? This is so crazy. It was a very unique time, and I definitely miss that now being on a level where I try to do as much as possible on that level, but I'm definitely more removed from it than that, being able to just have my greenhouse out behind the house and have people come over and be like, all right.
Right. It's hella hard when you don't have land. And even with some, a lot of people have land around here, but then you have to have the motivation. So it's like this big
Well, I got an
thing.
acre. I got an acre.
You could do a lot with an anchor,
Right?
Josh Kelly will tell you that. So, it's just whether you got the time or the means to do it and this and that, it all comes together. But I look up to the ones that, that food storage, like a year's worth of food and not have to go to the store at all to even buy food. Like we don't go to the store to get, grow material. But we do have to go sometimes to get, sugar or like milk or something like that. But we raise our own poultry and stuff. So we knock things out like every year to be like more sustainable and more off grid, but still like, have the lights running, and we appreciate it, But I was going to show off this real quick because this is what Amanda's been doing while I've been doing this the whole time, as we're already figuring out what seeds we're planting. This is all just veggies and flowers for this upcoming year. So
beautiful.
It's a lot of pre-planning. It goes deep, and this is not even the herb yet.
Beautiful.
Not even the herb. Thanks for sharing. That is appreciative. It's good to live that inspirational life. I mean, who doesn't want to like have a farm and have everything like be regenerative and sustainable and way beyond what we now call organic?
It's more than just quality of resin. I mean, like I eat, 3 meals a day, and those have to be quality too.
Well, I say it all the time, man. If you're going to smoke full melt hash, why wouldn't you eat full melt resin and have full melt relationships, and your entertainment is full melt, and everything is that. It's just a bar that you set that's like, this is what full melt means to me. And what it means is that cleanness, that purest, that just like perfectly, grown, sustainably grown, because a lot of stuff that we do nowadays is not sustainable, and now it's catching up with the younger generations. They're seeing that like all the things that have been done are not so easily undone.
Yeah, totally. I feel that a lot of people get inspired by what we do here, and I just tell them that you can go out and just got to try to work together in your community and build something out of nothing. It's really possible. It's the effort that beforehand no one really wants to do, because it's not, you're not custom or not used to doing it. So it's just a little bit harder to get that new change. But it's possible. People just got to do it.
And it takes a long time to get to that level. I mean, I know, Brandon, you've been working your spot for like nearly a decade or something. So I mean, it's not just overnight like, oh, look at me, oh, I'm dope now, like whatever, thousands of followers on Instagram. Nah, it's a lot of really hard work that you put in day and night. Like you're L's, like you're losing all the time, and that's the best teacher.
Right, dude. It totally is that. I mean, like I said, it's a lifestyle at this point. We eat, sleep, and breathe this 5 acres that we're on, and we're full blown. Like I can tell you how many days off I have a year, and it's probably like around a week of my life is it's separate, and it's full blown. But I love what I do, and if I didn't do it, I don't know, I wouldn't be doing as good for the earth, and that's what I woke up one day. I just got woke, and that's what it all came to. It's like, how can I help the earth if I can just stay on my property and just beast mode it out and make this place fertile and collect seed to ensure that that's my security, and that's the quality of life. I mean, it goes deep. Yeah, it just goes deep. That's a whole nother like different topic of like everything.
Yeah, we're going to get into that conversation on a Hash Church in a couple of weeks with the director and some of the people that are a part of the Need to Grow documentary that came out. And you should definitely come on as well, dude. I know Josh and Kelly are going to be there, and Dutch Blooms, Joshua is going to be there. And so it'll be a good group. You'll be amongst family.
For sure.
Yeah, I can say that really, really good hash was one of the things that made me want to grow my own food, and is one of the reasons why I do grow my own food, is because of what you said. If you're dabbing really, really good organic hash and you're sourcing it and you're growing it, like you might as well be eating 6-star too.
Well, the minute you're educated to it, right? You're like, oh, that filter gets dropped in, and now you see everything through the 6-star filter, and you're like, oh, damn, like, what's all this
Exactly.
swag in my life? Like,
I always say it actually provides like a little, like a really clear mind of health. People like, you know, I've got them smoking an 1/8 or plus or whatever, just a good hash, and they call me up days later and say, dude, my quality of life has increased.
oh,
Like
it's
I
for sure.
Yeah, and that's like, you know, I just say that's the first step, right? Good resin, good mind, get everything, and then it starts thinking better.
Dude,
it's not
for
bottom
real.
line, not the destruction, not the poisons fucking clouding up the mind.
You know, one of my first customer letters, that one of the first women that bought bubble bags from me and sent me a letter. She wrote me a letter. She said her father was elderly and he was suffering from wasting syndrome, and he was very, like, maybe 90 pounds or less, and he was passing away from not being able to eat any food from the drugs they had him on. And so she had somehow seen like a video I did on Pot TV about water hash, and she was like, I'm going to buy some bubble bags. And you know, she was, at first it was through emails. When she finally sent me the thank you letter that I'm about to get to at the end of the story, it was mostly just emails, you know, explaining to me, okay, I'm gonna go out on, I'm gonna go out in the streets. You know, she was from the Midwest, and I'm gonna try and buy some marijuana. And she ended up finding like an ounce of herb. I think she got burnt the first time, and it was like totally sketchy for this woman to do this. And so she ended up doing it. She got the herb. She went home and made the hash out of the bubble bags from following the simple instructions. And she had written me a letter saying, you know, I did all this stuff. I basically put a little tiny bit of this hash into my father's corn cob pipe. The guy was like old. And he smoked this little bit of hash, of bubble hash. And basically the big, you know, she said he ate an entire chocolate cake, a McCain's chocolate cake. He ate the whole thing that night. And this motherfucker had not been eating food, period. So I get it. At first I laughed too. I was like, oh my God, because it's the classic stereotype. Let's make fun of the stoners that have the munchies. It's just so much more profound when it's like, what about the elderly man who's passing away from wasting syndrome, who's now not only improving the quality of his life, but actually increasing the quality and the extension of his life. And so it was a very profound story to be told, you know, like 1999 selling bubble bags, kind of just like more of a connoisseur guy myself. I had come out of the BC Compassion Club, so I did have that whole history of helping the club and acquiring cannabis for the club and getting busted for the club. For those of you that don't know, I started the bubble bag company after getting busted with a bunch of herb that I had for the BC Compassion Club, for Hillary Black's Compassion Club, which I ended up going through court and getting no fine and no time. And the judge even ordered the money be given back. So it was kind of a big deal at that time when I had that happen, that I decided I wasn't going to be doing that anymore and working in the underground cannabis world. I was going to like transition and create an above ground. I mean, really, it was my lawyer who taught me, because they caught me with $6 grand cash and they called it proceeds of crime. And then my lawyer would be like, hey, you owe me 10 grand. And I'd give him like 10 grand. And then he'd throw it into like a paper bag and put it on his front seat of his car and drive home. And I'm like, how the fuck is that not proceeds of crime? And he's just like, well, you know, because I went to school and got degrees and I'm a lawyer. And when you give me that money, it's not proceeds of crime. And so I figured, is there a way for me to access money from the cannabis industry and give them something back for it that's not breaking the law, but still acquiring? Because man, let's be honest, everyone that bought bubble bags since forever has bought those bubble bags with money that they made growing cannabis. It's like literally like 99.9% of people that bought bubble bags. And that's okay. That's okay. Don't shush me, man. I liked it though. So just a little story. I think I got 6 more minutes. If Pua wants to chime in. Pua, you got the killer hash, dude. And you're on the island too. Aren't you in like Hawaii?
No, I'm in Oregon now.
Oh, you are in Oregon. But you were, weren't you? Or were you just...
During that last meeting, I was in Hawaii for my family late Christmas. That's what it is. We all meet up at Christmas.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, tell us something, man. I know you got your thing that you're doing. I saw your hash. It's straight fire. I know you're a little bit of your story, but I don't want to invite you on and then not have you say anything because all of us were so anxious to talk. I want to hear from you. I value your opinion.
Oh, right on. So lately I just been messing with the like wicking timing and the temperature of like the fridge that I use to keep the hash in, because I only air dry and seed. So with all these different cultivars, like they have different timings to where they can become easily break apart into rough edges that touch the sieve and will just turn into dust by itself without having to really put pressure on it or change the hash. And I like it because I get to see the whole process of it becoming dry hash.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely the way that the cubicles and the waxes like hold on to moisture and let go of them as well, just have all different feels to them and different textures. And I've just been messing with the wicking time a lot lately, especially for really greasy strains that like don't really yield very well. Today I was doing a grape pie, and I don't really like grape pie, but it's really greasy and really hard to work with. But if I got enough water out of it fast enough on the screen in the fridge, and it has to be down to like around 25, I'm getting this like fridge too. And it's crazy, like what Fletcher was saying earlier about, you know, terpenes like sometimes don't freeze. And like, you know, it's crazy to play with that of how cold do you need to go to like work with it like another strain that is easily workable in like a 50-degree room. But so I've been playing with that a lot. And in the past year, we've been like really into looking at like chem crosses, because we really like chem dog, me and the farmer that I work with. And a lot of it just has a lot of waxy stuff, but when you go through a bunch, you can finally find some that release 5%, and most of it's full melt, and there's even some in the 180, and the one we found lately in the Chem de la Chem has been our favorite. And even the 180's clean and full melt, and like honestly the rosin off of it's like the tastiest one out of all the microns from that strain. It's a pretty cool strain and a really cool plant from it. So.
And you're talking fresh frozen for a 5% yield?
Fresh frozen, yeah.
It's good. It's like damn near 20%.
Yeah. So it's pretty sweet because we really like the Chem Dog profile, and we want to be able to have like nice clean hash of it too at a reasonable yield.
It's delicious. Very good, man. I really enjoy it.
Oh yeah, thank you.
To relate to that too with the freeze drying, you know, the best thing I've found for retaining the most terpenes is really just getting is reducing the amount of time it's under vacuum. That's obviously
right
place to start, right? Removing as much water as you can before you're putting it in to the vacuum, while avoiding compaction, right? Where it's like compressed on itself and now it's harder to freeze dry. So, you know, like I made those screens for a while. I just don't have time to make them. But that's the thing that, you know, we've had batches of hash that dry in 6 to 8 hours in the freeze dryer.
Overall time or just final dry time?
Just running final dry, basically, right? So freeze it, chip it. So freeze it with, you know, hardly any water. Basically what you're trying to do is get the water out of it really quickly through wicking, and then you pop it into your frozen freeze dryer, right? So when you pop it in, it immediately, like within a couple minutes, the whole patty is frozen. And you can literally go in, break it up into chips, and throw it back in on the screen and run your cycle. And like we've pulled stuff out at like 6 hours, and except for like the very thickest pieces, there'd be a little ice in the center, right? And it would be strain dependent. And some varieties, they would already be dry. And that's that's not, you can't do that with everything, right? And that was like smaller runs, not big whole trays full, right? But that's just what I've seen is basically removing as much, because all you're doing is removing water, right, during the process. So if you have less water volume to start with, of course, it's going to take less time to finish.
Right.
And then increasing the surface area by chipping it up and breaking it up as well. I feel like that really helps as well too.
And it also being on a screen inside of instead of being on a tray where only one side's exposed, both sides are exposed. So it's all of these things together all contribute to it. But the main one being, if you have, let's say, 100 milliliters of water in a typical pour into your regular tray, and you reduce that to 15 milliliters, it's significantly less time.
The first time I saw that tech being used was in Spain. Bobby Collada from La Colada was showing it to me. And then, although I had talked to Space Greens over the phone one time with Frenchie and Nicotine, and we really didn't understand exactly what he was saying. When I saw it from Bobby Collada, I have to tell you, it was fast. It was significantly faster than the final dry, as it's called, that I do, and it was really nice. That chipped ice. Now, when I use the freeze dry, I chip my ice no matter what, even though I'm not using the Space Greens tech. But I want to say that everything I've seen from that has been pretty top notch.
Absolutely. Big shout out to Bobby Collada. Always has treated us amazing when we're in Barcelona. He even made a private non-smoking room for Skunkman Sam and myself one year when we went up to try his dry sift. That was a huge thing. Spain, they smoke so much, both joints and cigarettes. And for him to make this little room within La Colada that we could go and smoke, it was basically just Sam and myself in there, and then Bobby and a few of the La Colada guys. But it was very cool of him to do, and it was definitely above and beyond. And those guys know quality. They make great hash, dry sift, as well as bubble hash. And they were the first ones that I saw laser etch logos and such into the rosin. So I've seen a couple of people do it since, and it's not like it's the most complex technology, but what a cool thing to be the pioneer of. And I got to give it to those guys. That's where I saw it first. I hate to cut it down because I could talk with you guys for another hour easy, but I do have to go to Whistler. I have a place rented up there for the weekend, and my whole family is on the other side of the store. Literally, my little guy's wearing his pajamas right now, like bouncing off the walls, ready to go up to Whistler because he's got ski school at 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, and he gets to go. I don't know, they're doing some avalanche training or something. So imagine you're 5 years old and you're going to the top of Whistler Mountain to do avalanche training tomorrow. That's your day. So shout out to Tanner because that's his day. And shout out to all of you for joining me. Thank you so much, Best Friend Farms, Flav421. I know I'm going to see you sooner than later. Dank Duchess and Taste of Cascadia. Pua Extractions, Heavy Ice. We're going to hear more from you next time, dude. I know we didn't get to hear from you much. Archive, Fletcher, it's super, super stoked to have you show up, dude. I really appreciate it. As well as Kush Kirk, I really appreciate you coming and sharing with us, man. All of you, Great Lakes, Grease, and damn it, Bobby and Colin. Thank you all so much for making the first episode of HashTalk a good one. We had 420 people watching the whole time, so that's pretty cool. I'll try to do it again next Friday, maybe with the same people, maybe with some different ones. But thanks, everyone. I really do appreciate you guys all.
Bless. Thank you, man. Have a good night.
Peace out.